Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. Welcome to another live study for the NASM Certified Personal Trainer exam. Today we're going to be talking about the skeletal system in Chapter 5. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Good to see everybody today. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Yes. Okay. So Steve, am I showing you the skeletal system? You see this, right? Okay, great. So guys, in chapter 5, moderate priority chapter, please don't spend a ton of time trying to memorize all the names of the bones on here, please. Okay. So the most important thing on this particular page is just to look at your sidebar terms. Skeletal system, it is what it is, right? Bones of the body. Osteoporosis, of course, is very important to know. I'm assuming most of you know what that is, right? It's reduced bone mineral density, and it increases the risk of bone fractures. You'll probably get a question like that. And of course, what are joints? It's a site where two bones meet, and generally movement occurs. Okay, not all joints have movement associated with them. Okay, the bones in your head, your cranium. Okay, those guys are fused together, so there's no movement in those. They are they are not fused at birth, of course, but as you get older, those bones fuse together. But the joints that we're interested in, of course, from a training perspective, are going to be those joints that have movement associated with them. So remember, always look at the side panel first and see if you are familiar with any of the terms. If you are not, just make sure you look at them and understand them. Remember that we have all of these terms in the Quizlet that we provide for all of our students. Divisions of the skeletons. What do you not see, guys, on this page? What do you not see? You don't see bullet points, right? You don't see any figures. Do you see any tables and charts? No. So all you do is look over here and try and remember what these guys are. Remodeling, very important. The process by which bone is constantly being renewed. It's called resorption, and the formation of the bone structure, osteoclasts and osteoblasts. These are important to know. And by the way, the best way to remember osteoclasts and osteoblasts, osteo B, build, osteo B, building. So those are the cells that form and lay down new bone tissue. Osteoclasts, right, are those that break down and remove old bones. So there's constant recycling. So just know those. And then there's what's known as Wolff's Law. It's just explanation of remodeling, which occurs along the lines of stress that are placed on the bone. So if you do resistance training and you're putting stress on the bone from the muscle and the tendon attached to it, the bone will, quote, remodel or grow in that area. Hence the reason why it's a good idea for most people to do resistance training, especially women, just as a for instance, and those with osteopenia or osteoporosis. So, but I move on quickly. Watch how quick, look how quick we move, right? Because you don't need to spend a whole lot of time. Now, on this page, what do we see? We see a couple of things. You look at the training tip box and definitely read the training tip box. It's going to tell you what I just mentioned to you, right? Weight bearing exercises strengthen bones through remodeling. Does that make sense? So that's important to know, and you can always explain that to your clients. Now, what do we see? Well, you got a table. So we're always going to recommend that anytime you see a table, slow down and look at the table. And you're going to notice that this gives you the different types of bones. Am I going to tell you to memorize everything here? No, no, that would be a little bit challenging. I don't think you need to spend a ton of time trying to memorize the different bone types. Again, NASM's not going to ask you questions like which of the following has similar in length, width, and appear somewhat cubical in shape. They're not going to ask you a question like that. The answer would be a short bone, of course. But your job when it comes to a table like this is to look at it. My recommendation would be to rewrite it once. Okay. Most people already know what the long bones of the body are. They're going to be the arm bone, the upper arm bone, and the leg bone, the femur and the humerus. Are you all with me? Okay. Technically, you can include the radius and the ulnar, right? So the bones of the upper arm, the forearm, those are all long bones. The femur to include, if you want to include those as well, the tibia and the fibula. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So sure, read through it. If you're going to memorize anything, it would be the names, the names of those particular types of bones. Okay. But you'll notice we're not spending a ton of time on that, are we? So now what NASM is going to do is it's going to take that table and it's going to show you all of the bone types on that table. Does that make sense? So now you're seeing a figure. That's fine, right? Pretty easy now. But what don't you see on this page? You don't see any terms, do you, on the side panels, right? So you don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this page. No, you definitely do not need to memorize the specifics of bone components. So I'm studying this, I'm looking at it. I might read this area right here because I do have some bullet points, but I'm going to move on pretty quick, guys. So y'all got that? What you're thinking is there's a ton of it, so much information in here, but in reality, from a studying perspective, you don't need to spend a lot of time going through most of this. I would recommend reading the Stretch Your Knowledge box for sure. And then look, we went from long bones, short bones, okay, and it's only like 2 sentences for that. And then we get to the flat bones. The main flat bone that you're going to probably want to know is the scapula, right? The backbones, right? Those two bones on your back, the scapulae. So those are flat bones. And and of course, if you want to look, if you want to memorize something like a short bone, that's fine. Short bones are going to be the carpals right here. See these guys right here? They're sort of cuboid shaped. Guys, watch how fast I move. Boom. We're on to the next page. Do you see why I tell you these are moderate, low to moderate priority chapters? There's not a lot that you have to memorize in here. So once, however, you get to the next page here, you're going to have a definition, right? Flattened or indented portions of bones. Those are known as depressions. By the way, if I had just given you the word, could most of you have kind of figured out what we're talking about? A depression. What's a depression? Right? Well, there it is. Flattened or indented portions of bones. By the way, this is important to understand generally because of tendon attachments. Okay. Irregular bones, sesamoid bones, and those are your examples. If you wanted to remember those, I think it's fairly simple. Kneecap, and of course, the vertebrae of your spine. Bone markings, again, guys, you see how we're moving through this. You can write down as a heading title bone markings and then write down things like depressions and the sulcus and the fossa. You guys have heard me talk about the glenoid fossa. Remember, we talk about the shoulder joint. So fossa is an indentation or depression. And that's it right in here. It's where the humeral head sits in. So the fossa, the glenoid fossa, that's where the humeral head sits in. Okay. This is also showing you this indentation right here, which is what's known as the infraspinatus fossa. But you can move on. So processes, again, you can look at the definition. If they gave you a side panel word, you do want to read it and you do want to kind of remember what it is. So processes are the opposites of depressions. Depressions are indentations. Processes are projections or protrusions from the bone. And the miraculous nature of our musculoskeletal system is that these protrusions are really designed to increase biomechanical advantage for muscles. Okay? Otherwise, you'd be a robot with perfectly circular uh, bones and bone heads and articulating surfaces. We don't have those. They're oddly shaped. Guys, look, you see the shape in the knee? These are designed to increase biomechanical advantage of muscles. So processes are projections. We go down. We have what are known as tubercles and trochanter. You guys have heard me talk about these. The greater trochanter, right, of the femur, right, up here. Everybody see this? Okay. And then the turbicle, which is at the top of the humerus. Does everybody see that? Any problems with this? I think it's pretty straightforward. You can try to memorize it. I wouldn't put a whole lot of time into that. Now we get to an area, and you do want to slow down as you get to this area because the vertebral column is a little bit more important from the perspective of testing. Okay. How many of y'all that I got you off here because I wanted to ask you a question. How many of y'all know how many vertebrae are in the cervical spine? Show me with your hands. How many vertebrae in the cervical spine? Katie said five. Are you saying five? Five. Who agrees with her? No, it's five. No, she had it right on, dead on. Okay. Or excuse me, there's seven actually. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on a second. I'm looking at Katie and I'm getting distracted by her by you were thinking of the lumbar spine, Katie. It's actually seven. Mark, did you say seven? Yes. Mark said seven. All right. Katie said five and she went five. I'm like, yeah. There's seven in your cervical. There's five in the lumbar. How many in the thoracic? How many in thoracic, Mark?
I think it's 12.
12.
12.
NASM gives you an easy way to remember that.
Yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning for breakfast, 12
It's,
o'clock in the afternoon for lunch, 5 o'clock in the evening for dinner. 7, 12, 5.
Yeah, I
yeah,
ate breakfast at 5 a.m., so that's where I was at.
7, 12.
Right. So you guys get that. That's important to know. That's important to know. Okay. 7, 12, and 5. Got it?
Yeah.
So, and they give you that little explanation. They'll
Yeah.
show that to you. Um, so here's your table, and there's a description. Remember, if you hit a table, slow down, stop, and look at it. And this is telling you the description of those different. I would definitely look at this table and try and understand it. Okay, guys, got that? So first seven vertebrae starting at the top of the spine, yada yada yada. The other thing to remember is that each of those vertebral regions have an either a convex or a lordotic curve associated with them, or a outward curve known as a kyphotic curve. So the cervical vertebrae has what's known as a lordotic curve associated with it, and the thoracic vertebrae have a kyphotic curve. It looks a little bit like they always say the S shape. It's somewhat of an S shape, and then of course there's a lordotic curve back to the lumbar. What we normally don't look at is the coccyx and the sacrum. These are fused vertebrae, by the way. But if you look, you'll notice that it's also got a little bit of a kyphotic curve to it. Does everybody see that? So the sacrum and the coccyx collectively form a kyphotic, somewhat of a kyphotic curve. Does everybody see that? Lordotic, kyphotic, lordotic, kyphotic. And you can read through that and look at your definitions, okay? Last page, once you get here, so you see this, guys, cervical curve, thoracic curve, lumbar curve. If it were me, I would just in your notes or something, just cervical curve equals lordotic curve. Thoracic curve equals kyphotic, Kyphotic, kyphotic curve, and then lordotic curve. Okay. And so use the, you guys see the helpful hint that I just told you about? Use the breakfast, lunch, dinner analogy, right? 7 a.m., 12 p.m., 5 p.m. So make sure you look at your definitions here, the side panels, intervertebral discs, fibrous cartilage structures between vertebrae that act as shock absorbers, and neutral spine represents a position in which the vertebrae and associated structures are under the least amount of load and can most optimally support functional movement. By the way, guys, I hear this all the time. People say, have a neutral spine. What does that mean when you say have a neutral spine? What does that mean? Does it mean you flatten your spine out? No. A neutral spine contains all of those natural curves. Remember, when you're looking at somebody from the side, the spine has a slight little S shape to it. Does that make sense? From the front or the back, the spine should be straight up and down. If there's lateral deviation of the spinal column, that's called scoliosis. Y'all got that? So just keep that in mind as you're going through this part of the chapter. So that was pretty quick, wasn't it? Yes. And remember, the goal here is not, guys, you're trying to pass the exam. Okay. So you focus on those areas that we know are going to be tested on, and then you spend a little bit of time on those areas that we know they're not going to ask a ton of questions on. And so you can move pretty quick through that particular lesson that we just went through. So look, I appreciate you guys. Any questions on any of this? No, pretty straightforward, right? Not a lot to memorize as you're going through this part of chapter 5, but I appreciate everybody coming on board. If you have not done so, please subscribe to the channel. Let us know if you have any questions in the comment section below. We will see you next week. Have a great Thanksgiving, because as we're recording this, Thanksgiving is just next week. So have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you next week.